Welcome to another installment of Donning the Armor. This morning we will begin in Numbers chapter 16, verse 41. On the next day, all the congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron, saying, "You have killed the people of the Lord." So, coming off the rebellion of Korah, Dathan, and having the ground open up and swallow these people alive, the next day, the congregation of the children of Israel are coming against Moses and Aaron, saying that Moses and Aaron are responsible for killing Dathan and Korah and all the rebellious people who were with them, the 250 holding censers that were immolated by the Lord. So, as we obviously know, that's not true, and Moses even said it to all the people, that if these people die of a natural cause, then it's not of the Lord. The Lord isn't with me, basically. But if something entirely new happens that we have yet to have seen, then the Lord's the one that did it, and then the ground opened up and swallowed them alive in a way that they had never seen before, showing that obviously it was God who got rid of this rebellious faction of children of Israel who were trying to lead the rest of them astray. Now it happened when the congregation had gathered against Moses and Aaron that they turned toward the tabernacle of meeting, and suddenly the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron came before the tabernacle of meeting. So they're speaking out against Moses and Aaron again, and now the Lord is descending in a cloud and saying, "Hold on, this isn't what we're doing." And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Get away from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." And they fell on their faces. So, as happened on Mount Sinai, when God had told Moses, "Look, I'm just going to destroy the entire people and restart over with you," the Lord is telling Moses once again, just get away from these people. They're too wicked, and I'll just consume them in a moment. They don't believe that I am perfectly just. That's fine. I'll leave them to their fate. I'll just consume them. I'll get rid of them. They don't want to be my people. They don't have to be my people. And in that moment, Moses and Aaron fall straight on their faces to once again pray and make intercession for the people of Israel. So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a censer and put a fire in it from the altar. Put incense on it and take it quickly to the congregation and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from the Lord and the plague has begun." So Moses is telling Aaron, hey, take your censer, put incense in it, and go run quickly to the congregation. Remember, the congregation is like 2-3 million people. He's telling this 100-year-old man to go take this incense and go run in and amongst the people, making intercession for them, making atonement for them, because the Lord's wrath has gone out and a sickness is broken out among them, and people are already starting to die. So God says, look, let's separate. I'll destroy them all. I can restart with you. And Moses, doing what the Lord knows he would do, and Aaron doing what the Lord knows he would do, are making intercession on behalf of the people and showing that they are the leaders that he picked, that they are going to protect their flock, so to speak, that for all the problems they have, they are still going to do what they need to do to protect them. And now you have this 100-year-old man running back and forth through a camp, making intercession, making atonement for these people with this incense of the Lord. Then Aaron took it as Moses commanded and ran into the midst of the assembly, and already the plague had begun among the people. So he put in the incense and made atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living, so the plague was stopped. He basically ran through and made a barrier. He stood in that gap between the dead and the living. The high priest standing between the dead and the living to stop the plague. Once again, Jesus Christ is our high priest, and in this verse 48, you have this image that is such a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ standing in that gap for us, separating those who have salvation and are justified by his blood, being separated from those living in death to sin, who have marched themselves directly in to an afterlife without the Lord. And because of that, the plague is stopped. The wages of sin are destroyed. In this case with Aaron, the plague stops where he is, and he's able to separate the living from the dead. Now, those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who died in the Korah incident. So you had the people who died the day before with Korah. Now you have another 14,700 dying because of their rebellion and speaking out against the judgment of the Lord. Remember, 2 to 3 million people, 14,000 is not a huge percentage of them. So Aaron is still able to save most. You lose this number because they once again want to rebel against the perfect justice of the Lord. So Aaron returned to Moses at the door of the tabernacle meeting, for the plague had stopped. So he returns, it is stopped. He goes back to where he needs to be, ministering at the tabernacle. It's a crazy image of an old man running through with a bunch of incense, stopping this plague from spreading, saving as many people as he can, even though they wickedly wanted to turn away from the Lord for selfish reasons. But here we go, moving on to chapter 17. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and get from them a rod from each father's house. All their leaders according to their father's houses, 12 rods. Write each man's name on his rod. And you shall write Aaron's name on the rod of Levi, for there shall be one rod for the head of each father's house. Then you shall place them in the tabernacle of meeting before the testimony where I meet with you. And it shall be that the rod of the man whom I choose will blossom. Thus I will rid myself of the complaints of the children of Israel which they make against you. So the Lord's saying, look, you're going to take this rod, this staff used by the elder of each tribe, the father of each tribe. You're going to write their name on it, and we're going to see who I choose. I mean, everybody already knows who he's going to choose, but they want a demonstration. The Lord will give them a demonstration. Now, these are just walking sticks. They're just staffs. And he's going to make one of them blossom. Staffs made of wood, came from trees, long since dead. I'm going to make it come back to life and blossom. That way, I don't have to listen to anybody complain anymore. I put you in charge. Now I'm going to demonstrate it yet again. So Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and each of their leaders gave him a rod apiece. For each leader, according to their father's houses, 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among their rods. And Moses placed the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. So he puts them in the holiest of holies. He's going to put them before the Lord, and they're going to leave them there overnight and see the next day which one has blossomed and which ones haven't. Now it came to pass on the next day that Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron, the house of Levi, had sprouted and put forth buds, and had produced blossoms and yielded ripe almonds. Then Moses brought out all the rods from before the Lord to all the children of Israel, and they looked, and each man took his rod. So now he brings them out. All the leaders can inspect them. You can inspect every single one of them and see that your rod had nothing. You are not the one anointed. You are not the one chosen by the Lord to lead. You have your roles to play. You have your job. You have what you need to do to be successful in the Lord. But this leadership faction, this being a priest, this being a Levite, this being in charge of the whole thing, you're not chosen for that. Moses is, Aaron is, the house of Levi are. Because on his rod, not just started sprouting buds, but then produced blossoms and yielded ripe almonds. Now, was Aaron's rod from an almond tree to begin with? I don't know, but it is now. It means the Lord filled it with such life, a lifeless branch cut off from the roots. He filled it with such life that it gave forth ripe fruit, ripe almonds that they could go pluck and eat. That's how much life the Lord gives us. That we aren't attached to the world. This tree wasn't attached to the world. It was given life solely through him. It yielded fruit solely through him. It was a branch of his vine. And we're told when we are a branch of the vine of the Lord, the true vine, Jesus Christ, we will produce fruit in our lives. The Lord showing this here in Numbers, that Aaron's rod is now producing fruit because it's attached to his vine. This is where he has placed these people. Aaron is his representative. Moses is his representative to the people. They are living and bearing fruit in his name, being branches of his vine. And they will yield good, ripe fruit. It's a beautiful image of something we don't really teach that often, don't think about that often, and just leave in this Old Testament because so many Christians kind of like to stick to some of the things that they love from the New Testament. And that's fine. I mean, John, people love to read John constantly because it's a document written distinctly to teach about the divine nature of Christ. We love Ephesians because Ephesians teaches probably more Christian doctrine than any other epistle. We love Corinthians because it shows us how we are to be, how we are to walk out, by showing us negative examples of what the Corinthian church was doing by being almost too prodigal, living too prodigiously, and not caring enough about those who were not of the same wealth level as them, not of the same class. You have Philippians. You have all these great epistles, and people like to live in these documents and kind of push past the Old Testament. I'm a person who loves stories, so I love the Old Testament because I love listening to and reading the history of the nation of Israel and seeing the stories unfold. And I love instances like this where the Lord foreshadows the coming of Christ so much. The high priest standing in the gap between life and death. The high priest being shown through the power of the Lord to be a bearer of ripe fruit as a branch of his vine. Now you have all these other leaders of these tribes looking at their rods, knowing that they aren't chosen. They now have to take their rods back and go back to their tribe, knowing that what has already been laid out through Leviticus, through the end of Exodus, through the beginning Numbers is true. You are not the heads of Israel. You're the heads of your tribes, and you have jobs to do. Focus on what the Lord has brought you to and do it the best you can. You know, going through the gifts of the Spirit, or the giftings of the Spirit, not the fruit of the Spirit. That's what kind of popped in my head. But the gifts of the Spirit, you have prophecies, you have teaching, and being a pastor. One of them is the gift of helps. Being helpful. Everybody looks past that because everybody wants to start up an online ministry claiming to be an apostle, claiming to be a miracle worker, claiming to be this and that so they can get fame and money and their face plastered everywhere. But you know, the person who's standing outside the door of your church helping you in as an usher, the person who's cleaning the toilets after service, they're doing what the Lord has brought them to. They are glorifying the Lord in their service. And it's something we discount so horribly because in our sinful, prideful nature, we want to be the one who is put front and center and seen. But that's not what we're all called to. Very few of us are called to that. Most of us are called to be a servant in a way that brings us no glory. And we will only ever be somebody who is being of service in the background where others don't see. Or they see and they say hi, but they don't put much thought into, that's something I can do in my church as well. I can be an usher. I can be a doorman. We all quote the line, better to be a doorman in the kingdom of heaven than to be a king outside of it. To be the least in the kingdom of heaven. But when it comes to actually being a doorman for the body of Christ, no, that's too beneath us. We need to understand that these gifts aren't all the things that people get fame and fortune and notoriety from. Because more than likely, more than often, I should say, not more than likely, more than often when we start looking into these people who claim these great gifts, you can see that they're wolves and frauds. Benny Hinn doesn't really heal people. He's just a liar and a thief and a wolf looking to devour and glut himself on a congregation. That's all he does. And it's so sad because you'll see a lot of these charismaniacs in Africa doing the same thing. They're driving around in cars with nice suits, complaining when people aren't doing what he commanded them to do, tithing as much as he commanded them to tithe, while they're living in huts. He started off in one of the cities, but now he's traveling around from hutted village to hutted village, taking what he can from people, claiming to be a man of the Lord. He's not. He's a wolf. He's devouring not just the wealth and glutting himself on any wealth he can get. He's also destroying the faith of those around him. And when anybody criticizes him, he claims that you're going to go to hell for blaspheming the Holy Spirit. Well, the only way you're blaspheming the Holy Spirit in that instance is by making the Lord's name in vain. You're making it vain. You're making it empty. And so often that is what happens because we forget to look back. We forget to dive into Scripture and look at these instances where the Lord is showing people where He has put them, what He is enabling them to be, where they should be, and how they should be happy and appreciative of the blessings they have, which may seem like less than others, may seem more humble and meek than others. But that's why He reminds everybody, it's the meek and the humble that will inherit everything. Because it's the people who will put and submit themselves under His authority that will inherit everything. It shouldn't be about us. I believe it's Casting Crowns who has that song that basically is the idea that I don't care if anybody knows my name as long as they know the name of Christ. If the work I've done gives me no notoriety, but pushes the name of Christ off their tongue, comes off their lips, then I've done everything I need to do in life. That's what we should do. That's what we should honor. And that's what we should look to be, someone who honors Christ above all else, in whatever gifting he's given us. You go, Jesus, I haven't been gifted anything. I have no miraculous gifts. I have nothing of great stature. Look lower. Look more humble. Because he's gifted you with something. It might just be your ego that's causing you to look above where he's placed you. And really, since it comes from him, I guarantee you're going to find great joy in the humility of whatever it is he's put you in. But anyway, picking back up in verse 10. And the Lord said to Moses, bring Aaron's rod back before the testimony to be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put their complaints away from me, lest they die. Thus did Moses, just as the Lord commanded him, so he did. So now they take this sprouted, blossomed, fruit-bearing rod of Aaron's and put it back before the testimony, the Ark of the Testimony. And they put it in there, and we will see a couple of times where Aaron's rod is brought back out. But this is a sign against those who will rebel that shows, no, this was the proof that I have chosen Aaron above all else. His bloodline is going to be the line of the high priests. He is going to be my servant, not you. That way, you will see this and you will understand. You're not going to complain about it, or else you will face this plague again, essentially. So the children of Israel spoke to Moses, saying, surely we die, we perish, we all perish. Whoever comes near the tabernacle of the Lord must die. Shall we all utterly die? So now they're coming up and once again being upset about what's going on. But now they're starting to get it. That this tabernacle of the Lord, as they were already told before, is holy ground to be tended to by a specific people. That, yeah, they shall all utterly die if they go against the commanding of the Lord and come up to where they're not supposed to be. The Lord has put forth the rules. You are to follow them. They all will perish. This whole generation will die off because they went against the words of the Lord. They refused to go into the promised land. And now they're going to be forced to wander. But now they're finally opening up their eyes. Yes, when we come near here without the privilege and approval of the Lord, yeah, you shall utterly die. When you step out from what the Lord has commanded, you place yourself in error. And either you will die in your sin and of your sin, or the Lord will have to handle the situation as he sees fit. Because he will not have this fledgling nation being led astray by rebels, which seems to be what is happening quite often as we get through the book of Numbers. So, moving on to chapter 18. Then the Lord said to Aaron, you and your sons and your father's house with you shall bear the iniquity related to the sanctuary. And you and your sons with you shall bear the iniquity associated with your priesthood. Also bring with you your brethren of the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, that they may be joined with you and serve with you while you and your sons are with you before the tabernacle of witness. They shall attend to your needs and all the needs of the tabernacle, but they shall not come near the articles of the sanctuary and the altar lest they die. They and you also. So the Lord's basically explaining, you guys are the priests. You guys are in charge of this tabernacle. Any iniquity that falls upon it, you are now responsible for. It kind of reminds me of when you let your kids have friends over. You tell your kids, I don't want to hear that so-and-so did something. You were responsible for the conduct of your friends. You see them doing something they're not supposed to, you need to tell them that they need to stop. If they break a vase, you broke a vase because they're your friend and you are responsible for their actions as well. Well, the Lord's telling Aaron and his sons and those who will come after, they are now being made responsible for everything that happens here. So you need to keep your people in line. The Levites are your servants. The Levites are your servants. You need to keep them in check, or you will now bear their iniquity, because you're in charge. They shall be joined with you and attend to the needs of the tabernacle meeting, for all the work of the tabernacle, but an outsider shall not come near you. So nobody outside the tribe of Levi is supposed to come here and do any work. Doesn't matter how much they want to, doesn't matter how much they wish to do it, and they want to honor the Lord in this way, they cannot. It is only for this tribe. And you shall attend to the duties of the sanctuary and the duties of the altar, that there may be no more wrath on the children of Israel. Behold, I myself have taken your brethren the Levites from among the children of Israel. They are a gift to you, given by the Lord, to do the work of the tabernacle of meeting. Therefore you and your sons with you shall attend to your priesthood, for everything at the altar and behind the veil, and you shall serve. I give your priesthood to you as a gift of service, or for service. But the outsider who comes near shall be put to death. You have your responsibility as priest. The priesthood will come through your line, so you are responsible for teaching your children, your grandchildren, everything down the line. The Levites will be there for your service. This priesthood is now a gift, a high honor among all the children of Israel. That is to be a gift of service to me. That you now have this responsibility and this gift to carry out. But responsibility comes with it. Grave responsibility. And you will be held accountable for what you do with this responsibility. And the Lord spoke to Aaron, Here I myself have also given you charge of my heave offerings, all the holy gifts of the children of Israel. I have given them as a portion to you and your sons as an ordinance forever. So this is kind of reiterating the fact that various offerings, the Levites and the priesthood will be getting various portions of the offering for their own sustenance and wealth, that because they will not have an inheritance in the land. This shall be yours of the most holy things reserved from the fire. Every offering of theirs, every grain offering, and every sin offering, and every trespass offering which they render to me shall be most holy for you and your sons. In a most holy place you shall eat it. Every male shall eat it. It shall be holy to you. So they're to eat it. They can eat these things, these sin offerings, grain offerings, trespass offerings. The males shall eat it. They shall eat it in the tabernacle and nowhere else, because it is holy and set apart for this priesthood. This also is yours, the heave offering of their gift, with all the wave offerings of the children of Israel. I have given them to you and your sons and daughters with you, as an ordinance forever. Everyone who is clean in your house may eat it. So you have the heave offerings of different, the heave offering of different kinds of offerings that will be just for the priesthood, just for the Levites. Now you have gift offerings that will be for the entire household. all the best of the oil, all the best of the new wine and the grain, their first fruits which they offered to the Lord, I have given them to you. Whatever first ripe fruit is in their land, which they bring to the Lord, shall be yours. Everyone who is clean in your house may eat it. Every devoted thing in Israel shall be yours. Everything that first opens the womb of all flesh, which they bring to the Lord, whether man or beast, shall be yours. Nevertheless, the firstborn of man you shall surely redeem, and the firstborn of unclean animals you shall redeem. We went over this before. Since no one else is able to serve in the tabernacle, the firstborn must be redeemed. And unclean animals, since they're not fit to sacrifice, need to be sold and redeemed for money, because they can't be sacrificed before the Lord, because you have to sacrifice animals without blemish. And those redeemed of the devoted things you shall redeem when 1 month old, according to your valuation, for 5 shekels of silver, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, which is 20 gerahs. But the firstborn of a cow, the firstborn of a sheep, the firstborn of a goat, you shall not redeem. They are holy. You shall sprinkle their blood on the altar, and burn their fat as an offering made by fire, for a sweet aroma to the Lord. And their flesh shall be yours, just as the wave breast and the right thigh are yours. So, assuming they're clean animals, the firstborn of the cattle, the sheep, the goats, they will be sacrificed. They will be allowed to take on the meat that isn't burnt. That way they have their portion to be able to dry and be able to make, jerky kind of food stuffs from it to be able to last and feed their families. All the heave offerings of the holy things which the children of Israel offer to the Lord, I have given to you and your sons and daughters with you as an ordinance forever. It is a covenant of salt forever before the Lord with you and your descendants with you. The idea of the covenant of salt is it's something that lasts. It is something that is preserved. Salt can be used as a seasoning to make food taste better, but it is also something that was highly coveted in ancient world because it had such value. Because it was a preservative, you could dry out foods and preserve foods for long periods of time because they had no refrigeration. So you would salt meat, basically turn it into a jerky, and be able to keep it and eat it for days and weeks. It was so sought after that lots of times Roman soldiers would be paid not just their salary, but they'd be paid salt. And they would be paid sometimes solely in salt because of its value and how much they'd be able to do with it. Then the Lord said to Aaron, you shall have no inheritance in their land, nor shall you have any portion among them. I am your portion, and your inheritance among the children of Israel. So the priesthood, the Levites, they will not have an inheritance when they get into the promised land. They will have no portion of land. Now they will have the cities of refuge, but they will operate and be scattered among all of the land to be a guiding light for the rest of the tribes. That he is their portion. He is their inheritance because they serve him and him alone. Behold, I have given the children of Levi all the tithes in Israel as an inheritance in return for their work which they perform, the work of the tabernacle of meeting. Hereafter the children of Israel shall not come near the tabernacle of meeting, lest they bear sin and die. But the Levites shall perform the work of the tabernacle of meeting, and they shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that among the children of Israel they shall have no inheritance. For the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer up as a heave offering to the Lord, I have given to the Levites as an inheritance. Therefore I have said to them, among the children of Israel, they shall have no inheritance. Levites, priesthood, no inheritance in the land. They get no land to divvy up, no land to keep. They will be servants for the Lord in the land through everyone, which is actually what the curse set upon by Jacob was when before he died. He said that Levi would be scattered amongst his brothers. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak thus to the Levites, and say to them, When you take from the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them as your inheritance, you shall offer up a heave offering of it to the Lord, 1/10 of the tithe. So basically, the Levites themselves, even though they're receiving their pay from the tithes, are to tithe themselves. They are not they're not off the hook when it comes to tithing. They also have a responsibility to tithe 1/10 of what they take in as well. And your heave offering shall be reckoned to you as though it were the grain of the threshing floor and as the fullness of the winepress. Thus you shall also offer a heave offering to the Lord from all your tithes which you receive from the children of Israel. And you shall give the Lord's heave offering from it to Aaron the priest. Of all your gifts you shall offer up every heave offering due to the Lord, from all the best of them, the consecrated part of them. Therefore you shall say to them, when you have lifted up the best of it, then the rest shall be accounted to the Levites as the produce of the threshing floor and the produce of the winepress. You may eat it in any place in you and your households, for it is your reward for your work and the tabernacle of meeting. And you shall bear no sin because of it, when you have lifted up the best of it. But you shall not profane the holy gifts of the children of Israel, lest you die. You are responsible for the tithes. Do not profane it. This is a holy gift. Use it in a proper fashion, which is what most good churches do with the money you tithe to them. They try to use it in a way that builds up the kingdom of God, not tears it down, not treats it in an irreverent way. It is something that good churches will do to make sure that they are utilizing those resources gifted to them by the Lord in a responsible fashion. When it comes to giving to the poor, you don't just throw money at them. You have to make sure that when you give to a charity, you're giving to a charity where the money actually goes where it's supposed to go. When they're looking at missions groups, they have to vet the mission group to make sure that the money is going to the people it's supposed to go to, and not to enrich some CEO of a mission who basically never leaves the country. When it goes to a soup kitchen, you want to make sure it's one that is actually serving people, because there are so many charities that are not really that charitable, and we need to be responsible with the resources that the Lord has placed before us. But it is so interesting to see that the curse that Jacob placed upon Levi to be scattered amongst his brethren is being used in such a blessed way by the Lord. To see that it isn't just something that was negative, but is something the Lord has then turned around and used for such good. Is going to use for such a way to benefit his children. That this prophecy of Jacob, this promise that the Lord had him speak to scatter this tribe and descendants of Levi amongst all of his brethren, is going to be used in such a way to reward them and treat them and put them in a special place amongst the brethren, and use them to minister to the rest of the tribes and help bring them into a right standing with God. Not everything that seems like a curse is a curse, because what is so often meant for evil, the Lord brings about to work for good. Sometimes, even if we were stupid enough to do something that is essentially a no-win situation that's going to lead us to evil, so often the Lord will still turn that into something good. you have the testimony of so many people who were drug addicts and who were living lives in complete opposition to the Lord, being turned to live in complete obedience to Him. We have so many accounts like that. People who meant their own lives for evil, and the Lord turning them around, pulling them back in, having somebody come alongside them and minister to them until they accept Christ, accept the plan He has always had for them, and turn around and be such a great witness to bring others to Christ. No one can work wonders for good like the Lord. As long as we're obedient to Him, great blessings flow behind us. And we will be moved into places where we would not have previously imagined. There's no way 10 years ago you could tell me I'd be preaching about Jesus, that I would be praising His name. Because 10 years ago, I was crapping all over the name of God as an atheist. But when I felt that knock, when I felt the pull of the Lord, I just said, you know what? There's something to this. My eyes were opened, and here I am. Am I ever going to be famous and noteworthy? Hopefully not, because I don't do well in public, and I'm pretty anxious. But if this can be fruitful to a handful of people, amazing. And as long as I am being of service to my brethren in my local church and to my family, and that's the humble path He has for me, all the more the blessing. Because to be a blessing in the lives of the people closest to me is the greatest blessing I could think of, that I could imagine Him bestowing upon me. What is meant for evil, He can turn to good. What gifts He gives us, we may not recognize if we've turned our eyes too high. Because maybe we're prideful people and we need to be humbled. And by giving us a lofty position would be leading us to sin, and He needs us somewhere lower so that we were relying on Him and being of service to those around us. So that's where we will end it for this morning. I hope this was a blessing for you. I hope to see you again next time. But until then, be blessed.